What's going on out there, ladies and gentlemen? I am your host, Anthony Lykes. I am with Rafael Rhodes. Yeah, we're down one, but the show must still go on, and we're bringing you another great episode of Let Me Say This. Amidst all the madness in the NBA, there was a big trade that happened in the NFL, but we're still going to keep it strictly NBA because the playoffs are going, and we're going to highlight these small market players as I alluded to. So I just got one question: What the Halliburton? Tyrese Halliburton does it again, brings up another big win as Cleveland Cavaliers go up 2-0 now on Cleveland on the road. Now they head back home to Indiana to see if they can complete the sweep. I just want to get your thoughts on the game last night as far as how you think it played out and all that good stuff.
The game last night, when it was progressing through the game, I mean, Boston seemed or not, yeah, Boston seemed like they or Cleveland. I'm sorry, I'm
I mean,
thinking of
what
another series that I'm very interested in too.
you thinking
Cleveland
of Boston, New
seemed,
York?
yeah, I was Cleveland seemed like they were in control of the game through most of it, and I think their confidence kind of let them get the best of them. I
Yeah,
kind of figured that the Pacers were going to win at least one and push it to a 5 game series because the Pacers have been playing well. But we alluded to this a couple weeks ago. You said it a couple times. And I think personally that rest versus rust theory that you talked about played a huge factor. And I think when you have Halliburton, who's playing with a chip on his shoulder, being called overrated, his dad being thrown out of games, not able to watch games in person anymore because of what he did to Giannis's dad, or what he did to Giannis.
yeah.
I think that really kind of elevated him to another level. And this playoff run really did highlight him as he's not as overrated as people thought he was. He's been talked about as being overrated. He's been talked about not being the face of the NBA, but he's the face of that franchise, and he proved why. Last night,
Most.
they were down by 1 point with 3 seconds to go, and Halliburton gets his own rebound off of a free throw and shoots and drops back and
Uh,
shoots. And it was so impressive the way they ended the game. Dramatic. And I can honestly see this game going to 6, but I don't know if Boston's going to be able to pull it out.
by the way, he means
Or
Cleveland for y'all out
Cleveland.
there, ladies and gentlemen.
Cleveland.
But it's all good.
I,
We know what you meant, son. But yeah, but
I'm so hooked on both of these series, though, because I do want
yeah,
to talk about the Knicks series as well.
yeah,
And
and
I was
that
so impressed with that.
game one. I mean, game two is going on as we record right now. But yeah, I still don't want to just gloss over the fact of that game one. I'm gonna highlight a lot of things as far as Cleveland. You're down three guys. You're down the defensive player of the year and Evan Mobley. You're down your playmaker and Darius Garland. Another ball handler aside from Donovan Mitchell, and you're down DeAndre Hunter, a great wing player, defensive stopper, stuff like that. So, you're already at a disadvantage. For me, I'm thinking, okay, Pacers probably going to go in. They probably going to build like a nice, comfortable lead and, pack this thing out and go back to Indiana up 2-0. But then it's okay. Donovan Mitchell put the team on his back, and you couldn't ask for more from Donovan Mitchell. Like you can ask for more of your star player. He almost gave you 50 points. He got 9 assists. The threes weren't falling, but he was getting to the free throw line, and I'll get to that with Boston as we talk about all those threes they missed. But he was getting to the free throw line. 21 attempts, made 17 of them. But as far as Cleveland, the late game execution was terrible. They didn't close out on rebounds on a couple of those free throws, and I think not having like Mobley out there or even a DeAndre Hunter out there, some guys with some length and size out there, not being able to grab those rebounds, it kind of showed in those moments. But and then the controversial call, Tyrese Halliburton stepped in the lane before the ball left the cylinder, so some people are calling it a lane violation. I feel like they won't really gloss over that because he wasn't the first person to touch the ball. So that's probably why it didn't get called, because if he was the first person to touch the ball, he 9 times out of 10 they likely would have made that call of a lane violation. But for him to even just take that shot in that moment, it just shows like, and like we were talking about, like you guys want to call him overrated and all that good stuff. Like he's, I think we can kind of put that to bed. And I know who we want to anoint as the face of the NBA, as an Anthony Edwards, even a Jason Tatum, because he has the resume to show that he can be the face of the NBA. But I will go on and say that Tyrese Halliburton is, I want to say he is the new point guard. I will give him that. If he might not be the face of the NBA, but I will call him the point guard. So, because he's showing up in the moments in the playoffs, like he sent Milwaukee home in that series when they were losing that game as well. So, I don't know what it is, the lack of teams not being able to finish versus the Pacers, or the Pacers just will not to die, no matter the situation. And, when you're on the road, you want to steal at least one game. But the fact that they got two before they even go back to their building, like now you're in a situation, no matter what, like, hey, I wouldn't necessarily say play free, but at any given moment they can win a game. But all we got to do is win two more games. You know what I'm saying? So, and I think I don't want to really go on and say this can be a 7 game series, because if it gets to the point where it goes 7 games, I probably will give it to Cleveland, because you got to take care of your business when you got a team backed up against the wall like this. So I will say, and you don't want to give them no doubt, basically. So you want to try to close this out within 5 or 6 games. You don't want to leave it a game 7. I will say, I guess home court is kind of been debunked within these first 2 games, because you count the Pacers twice and all the other game ones. The teams are 5-0 to start. The road teams are 5-0 to start. So I guess you can kind of debunk home court advantage, but you do want that 7th game on your home floor, with the exception of Houston, who lost on their home floor, another team that struggles to shoot. But so that's all I really have to say about that.
Well,
And I
now
guess we could kind of.
I've got a couple questions though on what you were saying. Um,
Uh,
Now Halliburton, I think, although he is not, you say he's point guard of the year or point guard,
Point guard,
um,
yeah.
but I think he's quietly making himself the face of the NBA. And it's in a quiet fashion because he's overlooked by everybody else. And he's overlooked because they call him overrated. And I think that puts a
Yeah.
chip on his shoulder. And I think
Yeah.
he makes a very strong case for it. And I think because he's quietly doing it, it makes the fact that he's averaging over 28 points a game in the playoffs so far pretty impressive.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and when you put it like that, and you put what he's doing, do you think that that plays a factor into being the face of the NBA? Are you not only, scoring well and scoring high, are you also doing it in a manner that the team that you play on, even in a small market, really relies on you?
Oh yeah, yeah, most definitely, because like the guys around him also contributed, but as well. But it's like, but when the moment shines the brightest, the guy that always has the ball in his hands in those type of situation has been Halliburton. We saw it in the closeout game against Milwaukee in that game 5. We just saw it last night in the game 2. So it's like, so not only is he doing all the other things well as a point guard is supposed to do, but like he's not running away from that moment. So I will say,
So
yeah,
so
like we say, is
in your opinion, would you declassify him as overrated? And
yeah,
would you
I,
place him more in the solidified field where he belongs, and he should be talked about more often because without him those Pacers are nothing.
yeah. So yeah, what he's been able to do, even last year, making it to the conference final, because who even expected Indiana? Like, guaranteed, granted, there was some injuries, but that's part of the game. When you go on a run like that, there's always going to be a little luck involved. So kind of shut that down. So yeah, I will say, yeah, he's kind of put that to bed, and like, not, and then some people take overrated as a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that you're not as good as people give you credit for. So like some people can say, hey, I think Jason Tatum, and I hate to use his name, but it just came to mind. Jason Tatum is a top 4 or top 5 player. Most people, you probably got I think you're overrating him. You're rating him too high. I think he's a top 7 or top 8 player in the league. You know what I'm saying? So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can be taken as a slight, especially a guy like Halliburton who goes out and shows that he can win, that he can step up in big moments, versus a guy that in a James Harden, who seems in the big moment seems to shrink, you know what I'm saying? And a guy that has an MVP. So that's the way I kind of look at it. So I don't
Yeah,
necessarily, I think in some people's eye, he's not putting out that, putting that to rest, but it's slowly but surely over time, depending on how these playoffs go for him. As long as he don't, lay eggs the rest of the playoffs, then of course he can put that to rest, because this is not a fluke. This is not a fluke. What's happening, ladies and gentlemen? Like this
So
just happened.
the one thing I will say is I don't want to classify him as overrated. Now, will I say he's one of the top three in the NBA? Probably not, right? But
Ah,
I mean, when you're talking about is he overrated? I mean, the one thing I look at overrated, and to me personally, it is a slight. You know, you say somebody's overrated, it's like they're not good enough to be in the position that they're in, right? So I look at him and I go, he's in the right position on the right team in the right market for him. He's not overrated at all. I think he's in
yeah,
the right position. He's consistent because you got to think he is consistent and he's reliable. For the past 3 years, he's been reliable and consistent on the Pacers team for the Pacers.
yeah,
He's gotten them to the playoffs in 3 years, for 3 years straight, for a team that wasn't supposed to be considered going deep into the playoffs at all. They got into the Eastern Conference Championship last year.
yeah. And a lot of people
And
also forget that. Now, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish what you had to say.
and I was going to say like that to me that's part of him really solidifying it. Then you take him into this year so far, second round of the playoffs. They
Mm-hmm.
should have been down 0-2 in a lot of people's projections. And if they were to
Yeah,
win one game, it was going to go to five, and Cleveland was going to win five.
yeah,
Now you're looking at they're up 2-0. And with Cleveland has their back against the wall. Now I know we talked about injuries and Cleveland suffering from injuries, Mobley out, and that's their star defensive player of the year. But still, I mean, you have to find a way to win. Another
yeah.
question
You
I
got to
have
finish
for
that
you.
game.
Another question I have for you: does Cleveland's lack of experience in the playoffs play an impact on it too? Where Halliburton and the Pacers have experience.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say lack of experience because a lot of those guys that was on that roster, with the exception of DeAndre Hunter, I think was on the team last year. Of course, your Donovan Mitchells, but and also last year they did face injuries because I don't think Donovan Mitchell. I don't think he played in that many games in that Boston series last season. So they kind of been down this road before. So I don't think it's the lack of experience. I think it's the lack of I think it's just the lack of execution and closing in the moments because you can't. It's one thing to give up the 20-point lead, but sometimes you see teams, especially in the the era where 3-point shots, you can get back in a game if you just knock down a bunch of threes. So like, is it sometimes you just need to hold serve like we saw with Golden State, Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota was clawing back, but at the same time, Golden State was doing just enough to like just hold it in the road and we gonna finish out the win. So you just got to do that. And then like them being up 20 points, even with those injuries, you can use it as an excuse. But at the same time, it's like it's going to be one of those both way situations. Yeah, we were down. If they go on and finish that game out and win by the amount that they were up by, at least by 15, 20 points, we were down this many guys and we still was able to win big. You know what I'm saying? You're going to use that and try to lift the team up. And then on the flip side and say, well, we were down guys. So it was only a matter of time. Like Quinn Snyder used his post game presser. It's like, yeah, we kind of got gas, which is true, but it's just like you guys still had a lead to where you could just put this game away. So it's just like I don't really want to say. I don't want to hear you making excuses, but it's just like, hey, you got to the next man up. They got to be ready to play. That's just about it. That's all it came down to. Your late game execution, like you failed in a couple of spots to like you didn't secure a rebound. Donovan Mitchell had the foul. They turned the ball over on the inbound, stuff like that. Like that can be corrected, but it's just like, yeah, that's all. You just got to execute those situations better. That's about
And,
it.
and I agree, and I know what you're talking about with the experience, but then you look into the other factors that play into it as well. They may
Mm-hmm.
have experienced this before, but they also experienced this before this exact same situation before where they folded. And I mean, I think that kind of negative experience where they didn't learn how to bounce back. They bounced
Yeah,
back great in the regular season, but you didn't bounce back when it counted. I think that plays a factor too. And you bring up another thing that we talk about, like the excuses portion of it, kind of comes in, and the gas. They said they were gassed. So rest versus rust. The Pacers were hot in that Milwaukee series, and they transferred it over right into Cleveland
yeah.
on 3 days rest.
Speak. See, I was about to say, I just want to highlight because I think if I looked it up because I wanted to make sure I was kind of backed up by fact. I think as far as rest goes, I think Cleveland and Indiana, it was only like a day difference of rest because Cleveland went on and did a complete sweep 4-0, and then Milwaukee, Indiana with the gentleman sweep. the 4-1. I think they only had I think Cleveland had 1 day up on them as far as rest goes. So it's like both teams pretty much essentially had the same amount of time off going into that game one. I guess so. But all the other series, you can kind of see like the difference between OKC and Denver. Denver coming
Mhm.
in off 48 hours, and then but the thing about the Denver series is like they went up big. So when you go when you go big in the fourth, you are big in the fourth quarter. You can afford to kind of sit some guys for a little bit. You know, to rest your guys to go and get ready for the next series, especially you know who you playing. So it's just like so. But that so I kind of like the rest thing. Those two teams pretty much had Cleveland and Indiana pretty much had the same amount of time off. Everybody else that played in a 6 or 7 game series, yeah, they pretty much had 48 hours in between games. Golden State, Denver, Minnesota was another team that had like a pretty much a week's worth, almost a week worth of rest. I think with like 5 days. So, but all the teams that basically played that had to play the 6 or 7 game, like you said, they came in hot and with the exception of maybe Boston kind of helped New York get back in the game because they were settling. I guess we could just kind of segue back into that game or talk about that game one.
Mhm.
So like I want to know what like how you feel about that. Do you think I know the league is pretty much on threes, but do you think Boston was pretty much just settling for threes, even though they were good looks, but do you think they were still settling at sometimes?
I think Boston took risks on the threes. I mean, when you shoot 60 threes in a game, which is a record, and you only make 15, which percentage wise is also a record low. I mean,
Yeah.
you are settling at that point. I think they should have taken the ball to the hoop a whole lot more against the Knicks and really bruised them up a little more because the Knicks just got off a really like challenging series that was
Yeah.
physical against the Detroit Pistons. And if Boston would have taken advantage of that, so honestly, I think this is preparation and lack of adjustment on
Yeah.
the coaching side,
I'm
on
about to,
Mazzulla's
yeah,
side.
because I was about to say yeah, because sometimes you got guys you got like a Jason Tatum like he can work the post, so it's like sometimes you got to draw up plays for your players to get them in spots to where get them to the basket. Because earlier in that game they did have like Cat and Jalen Brunson, they were in early foul trouble, so you could have just kept
Mm-hmm.
attacking them and not and foul trouble aside those some of those like Jason Tatum, cat guard Jason Tatum is a mismatch. So it's just like because he can run by him, he's a little bit quicker. So you got to use that to your advantage. Like even though the shots were open and they just weren't going in, it's at the same time it's just like still you gotta okay cool. The shots are not falling. Let's get some easy looks or let's get to the free throw line and see the ball going to the hoop. So then that way okay we can kind of get back into the rhythm of things instead of just trying to down the hill or shooting 63s and only making 15 of them and shooting your way out of the game and letting this team come back. And that was also, they executed down the stretch late. And they took 37 threes and made 17 of them, so that's nearly 50%. So when you do stuff like that, that'll win you games. Plus, like attacking the basket and closing out on rebounds and stuff like that, as the Knicks were doing to get their way back into this game. Now, as this game two is going on, they kind of struggled in the first quarter. They're struggling in the first quarter to get shots to go in, but I think they kind of worked their way back in the second quarter. They're still down by like double digits, but yeah, Boston just got to be more. And what I'm seeing so far, they're being more assertive as far as getting to the basket and getting the easy looks. And I kind of want to transition to the Denver and OKC series. Um, I'm sure SGA is going to win the MVP, but like Jokic with another incredible performance. Is he still like? Is it still one of those? Jokic is we know Jokic is the best player in the NBA, but is he really? Should he be the MVP? That's what I'm asking.
I mean, he's made a strong point for it. If you consider the playoffs in it too, he's really made a strong point for it. And to me, Denver's been the most surprising team in the playoffs because you don't fire your coach 10 games before the playoff. You don't fire your coach and your GM and go, okay. And usually when teams do that, they're throwing the season away and they're like, we'll just rebuild next year.
Yeah,
And the Denver Nuggets haven't done that. They sat there and said, "Yeah, we fired him, but we're going to come back. And by the way, we're going to play the best ball we've played." And
yeah,
and they're not relying on an interim coach to do it. They're relying on Joker. So
pretty much. Yeah,
he's the Jackie Moon. He's a literal Jackie Moon of the NBA.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
impressive to see it happen. And I think if you take everything into account, like the totality of the circumstance with Joker, I mean, why wouldn't you put him as the MVP? He coaches a team, he plays, he's become
Yeah,
more vocal with the head coach and the GM being fired. He's not afraid to
yeah,
speak his mind, and he's actually, I mean, he's putting up enormous effort and points and guiding this team. And Aaron Gordon, he's highlighting Aaron Gordon because Joker's also a playmaker.
yeah.
I mean, Aaron Gordon
No,
was the star of Game One.
oh, most definitely. Most definitely. Like Joker
You know,
does what he does, but Aaron Gordon and then Russell Westbrook continues to be, a great spark plug off the bench. Like, I know people give him, saying kind of pour
but
on him a
but
little bit, but like he shows up
Aaron
and
Gordon
plays
the
hard. You
past two
can't discount
games,
that.
Aaron Gordon the past two games has made game winners.
Yeah.
Aaron
Oh
Gordon
yeah.
was overlooked when he was with Utah
Orlando, by the way.
or Orlando.
But yeah.
Yeah, Orlando.
Yeah. But
Wrong
yeah.
Gordon.
Yeah, because it was they had nothing and then they didn't know how to use them down there. Now, that's why they made that trade for Aaron Gordon, because it's somebody else that can help Jokic on the glass, and he don't really Jokic, because we know Jokic is not that great of a defender, as we know. So that's something that Aaron Gordon can do. He can unlock the team defensively. So yeah, Aaron Gordon, that's why they make that trade, and that's why teams like that win championships. They make small moves like that contribute to winning, and not just trying to make, what I'm saying, go for the splash names that we've seen in years past to try to win championships. They make get other players that are pretty much star in their roles per se. You know what I'm
But
saying? And that
offensively though, Aaron Gordon has made the game-winning shots in the past two games.
yeah,
One with a buzzer-beating dunk
yeah,
on an alley oop
that's
that was sick, and then the last game that we just watched
yeah, that
against
was
OKC.
that was a big time bucket. And I wonder, now we could get into that topic about inexperience, because we seen what happened last year with OKC and they got to the second round. They did a number on the Pelicans, same as the Grizzlies. Easy matchups, I guess you could say. Players out and stuff like that. Now we get to a matchup to where now they're playing another team in the second round that has a guy that is a top three player in the league, and Jokic being the number one, and Luka being probably the second or third best, however you want to put it. And now they're back to, well, I don't think they went up in that series early, but now they're down 0-1 now. So how do you think they respond? Because they need guys to step up as well. I know we got SGA, stuff like that, but like you need your Jalen Williams, you need Chet. Chet missed the two free throws, and then also the coach execution. Like, why are we fouling when Jokic on the bench? Like stuff like that. You can't do stuff like that. So how do you think they respond in this
I
game
think
too?
I mean I think Oklahoma City will make the right adjustments and they're going to make it a game, but I don't think they. So what I think happened, and I'm going to take this back to the previous conversation we just had. I think Boston overlooked New York in that first game. They just overlooked them. They thought they could take those 63s and no
Yeah.
matter what they could stop Boston or they could stop New York. And they counted out Jalen Brunson. They counted out Cat. They counted out Cat. And I know they were in foul trouble early. I think Cat had what four fouls already by the third quarter. So they were in
Mhm.
foul trouble early. But I mean, you overlooked them, and I don't think Oklahoma City really overlooked Denver. I think Denver came out with more emotion and more to prove because look at the storylines behind the game. You
Yeah.
have Joker, who might be overlooked as the MVP to SGA, which, by the way, no shy on SGA because he made some impressive buckets throughout that game too. And he proved that he is great. But then you look at Russell Westbrook, who at one point in time played in Oklahoma City,
One of the
and you
best
don't think
players
that brings
in franchise history. Yeah.
and you don't think that brings a little bit of maybe the way Russ exited Oklahoma City and the way he left and he wanted to win a championship there and he wanted to stay there for a while and now he's playing for Denver. Do you think that that puts a chip on his shoulder too? And I think
Well,
I think emotion plays a big factor in the NBA.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you think that
Being able
that chip
to.
on Russell Westbrook's shoulder plays an impact?
Well, I will say I don't think Russ didn't leave OKC on a sour note. It was just one of those situations like, hey, it just reached his peak, and he didn't want to be a part of a rebuild, so he kind of he moved on, and what I'm saying, stuff like that. And then they had they ended up trading Paul George for all those picks, and then SGA was included and stuff like that. And then they brought along Chris Paul. Houston sent to OKC basically for him to quote unquote like die, but we all know Chris Paul in his prime, peak condition, can elevate a team. So I don't think, but Russ is probably in some people's eyes because of that KD move, what he did was the best player in the history of that franchise. And then now you got, as you brought alluded, now we're talking about SGA can go on to possibly do great things and do something that even KD nor Russ could do, and kind of like um, bring a championship back to the city, to a franchise that's not even 20 years old yet, and then kind of elevate himself as being the all-time great Thunder player, number one on that list. So I will say now that is a driving force. Like I'm pretty sure like he would want that not to happen, even though I think it eventually will happen. But in the moment, I think he wants to kind of shut that down a little bit and like, hey, this is still, I've been gone for a while, but this is kind of still my kingdom. This is kind of still my city. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's
Yeah.
kind of what Russ wants to do.
And I didn't mean to say like he left on a sour note. 'Cause I know he didn't leave on a sour note,
Yeah,
but
I got you.
I know he really didn't want to leave.
Yeah, yeah,
But he
yeah,
didn't want to be a part of the rebuild there either. He loved Oklahoma City. He loved playing in a small market. He was happy there. I mean, he was great when he was there. He was great for the franchise, personality wise, in the press. He was fantastic. And then when he left, you could kind of tell he didn't want to leave,
yeah, 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 yeah,
but he also didn't want to be a part of the rebuild. And he kind of felt he was being overshadowed a little bit. And I think when you look at that, I think that and he rallies the team around him. He rallied the Nuggets around him,
mm,
which really impressed me. So now the other series that I wanted to ask about that now I'm interested in is we're going to be out Steph Curry for about a week with Golden
yeah,
State and the
yeah,
Timberwolves. So now do you think that the Timberwolves see this and they see this as an opening to come back from a game one loss
yeah.
and
So
do that?
I was about to say, yeah, I was about to say, Anthony Edwards, second half, he needs to play the second half. I mean, well, he needs to play like he played in that second half to start the game, because I'm pretty, if he, 22 points in the second half, he does that in the first half, or at least half of that, they go on to win that game, or be in a chance to win that game. So he has to be more assertive. Shots weren't falling for him. You got to, he only had 1 point. So that means he wasn't being aggressive enough. Credit to Golden State defensively, I guess, too. So stuff like that. But still, sometimes you just got to find your way to get to the basket. And he did that in the second half. Shots was falling. He was getting to the basket. Even with Draymond on him one time, he made a layup while being fouled by Draymond. So he has to do stuff like that.
Yep.
But yeah, with this,
But now they're not going to have Steph Curry for a week with a hamstring
yeah.
injury.
So with that, yeah, it's kind of different because he's missed playoff series before. In the early parts of their championship runs, they still had a peak Clay and all that good stuff. Like Sean Livingston was able to come in, but now it's kind of different. Yeah, they got Jimmy Butler, but there's also no Kevin Durant. Buddy Hield is stepping up. Like we talk about Aaron Gordon and guys like that. Buddy Hield has also stepped up in the playoffs. So I think they just have to kind of depend on their guys and probably turn their that defense can turn into a transition offense to where they can get some easy looks to kind of alleviate Steph not being there, because obviously they don't have that threat on the court. And then also, like as Jimmy Butler says, any team he's on, he thinks they have a chance. So Jimmy Butler can probably get back into the playoff Jimmy mindset for however long Steph is out and stuff like that, and put the team on his back as well, along with Draymond being one of the defensive stoppers and one of the vocal leaders in that locker room, because a guy that has championship pedigree on that roster, as far as Jimmy Butler, a guy that knows how to get there. So I think they will be in good hands without Steph, but you don't want to rush a soft tissue injury like that and make it worse. So just they'll probably take it a game by game basis, because like we see how James Harden tried to trot out there in Brooklyn with the messed up hamstring, and he was not himself. As much hell as we give James Harden, after he tried to come back and play on that one leg, it was, yeah. So you
But
don't want
now,
to kind of
now,
rush that injury.
now, you bring up Jimmy Butler and you know recent. recent history is what people remember the most. And as good as the Heat was to get into the playoffs the past few years with Jimmy Butler on the team, they haven't won a championship because
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Butler then all of a sudden fades out. Is this a series that we see Jimmy Butler fade out because now it's going to rely on him? He's great when it's not relying on him and he's a
Yeah.
co-star. He's a co-star to Steph Curry and Draymond Green.
See, I don't
Now he's a
think
star.
necessarily. I don't necessarily think he fades out because you got to think all those finals runs. That's the last round of the playoffs. So everything he's done up to that point, yeah. So I can kind of see why he hits the wall in the finals. Understandable, especially a game when one finals game in the bubble, he played all 48 minutes. So I kind of get
Mhm.
the next game he goes out. Yeah, of course he's going to be gassed, but in the second round of the playoffs, hey man, we probably gonna need you to step it up for a week at best. You know what I'm saying? I don't think there's a wall, him hitting a wall in a week in the conference semifinals. I don't think that's a problem. But but just you know what I'm saying. Like I said, take this as a game by game basis, and then like he didn't have like in the other games where there might have been Jimmy Butler was with the Heat. I don't think there was really anybody else that was a threat as far as like scoring. As sometimes it seemed like it was just all Jimmy, but now so like I said, Buddy Hield has stepped up in his role. So if Buddy Hield can go out there just continue to do what he does, it can kind of take some of that pressure off Jimmy, and you see how they're meshing together. So stuff like that,
And,
it's
and I
gotta
agree
watch
with
out
you,
for stuff like that too.
but I'm just asking because I think Jimmy Butler is so much better when he's not the main focus,
Oh yeah,
and he's more free. Yeah, I think in his mind, but when he's the guy,
yeah.
when he's the star, and he's the one that the focus is on, I think there's something that gets in his head a little bit that goes, ugh, like it kind of tightens up. And I'm not saying he's terrible at it. I'm just saying when you're on a team right now with so many good players, uh,
Mm-hmm.
he has to rely on everybody else around him to really step it up to actually get through this series if Steph is out longer than a week.
Yeah, the thing about I think his play on the court, like he has to show the leadership on the court, and probably Draymond, alongside Draymond Green, I think Draymond Green is going to handle like off the court / in the locker room as far as being the vocal presence. So because I think Jimmy probably had to do both of those. Now he only has to like do one of those things, but like I said, I don't really think it's going to be an issue. Like I think he probably just go out here and tap into that mode. And I want to say I think I don't want to say the rosters are pretty even, but I will give as far as the rosters Jimmy has been on in recent years, I will give a slight edge to the Warriors as far as the supporting cast go. So,
I, I
but it
agree. I
all
would agree on
also
that.
it also depends on how the Timberwolves play, and that like they can take some things from how they Anthony Edwards in the second half and just carry it over to the next game, and he can put together a full game of what he did in the second half of the first game, and now it kind of is 1-1 going back to go back to San Francisco play Golden State and stuff like that, and see how that game goes. But I will going to say, depending on how long Steph is out, it's going to be a game where Steph was needed. Just his presence alone was needed out there. It might not be this game, but eventually later in this series, if this series goes to that sixth and seventh game, if he's out for that long, it's going to show that hey, yeah, we needed Steph's presence was needed on the floor tonight to kind of just open up, just give up, open up some looks for the other guys, including
And
a
I
Jimmy
do
Butler.
and I do want to say I do want to say like Steph Curry is by no means a slouch or by no means like playing injured. I mean, the man's playing with an injured thumb, which really doesn't affect your shooting anyways. Ball handling
Mm,
maybe a little bit if your thumb is injured, but a hamstring injury is just something that is
yeah, you can't take
nagging.
that
It
lightly.
does,
Yeah,
yeah. And if he tore the hamstring and he tore it off the bone, like you're looking at a year where he's
yeah, he's gonna be
rehabilitating.
out for he's gonna be out for a while because
So
even Dak, and I'm glad we brought the hamstrings. Even Dak has been out. It's talking about how he might not be ready for training camp. And then, right, speaking of the Cowboys, our last topic, maybe, like I said, because I wanted to cover all NBA things first. Cowboys just made a move for a young receiver in George Pickens to go opposite of CD Lamb. They only give away a third and I want to say a 6th round pick. So they got him for
Third and a
a
fifth.
bargain. Yeah, a third and a 5th round pick, excuse me. And that's basically a bargain. So, like, what do you feel this does for the Cowboys? A lot of saying it's really not doing anything as far as they probably went from being the fourth best team in the division up to the third ahead of the Giants. So, what do you see as far as the moves that they've made in free agency, and then as far as the draft, which they always do good in the draft, it's just free agency they kind of slack off. But how would you rate the Cowboys this offseason, just this offseason, free agency and
I,
draft?
I think so far this offseason, what the Cowboys are doing is really showing that kind of Jerry Jones is actually maybe grabbing a grasp on reality and what his team needs.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna get George Pickens in there, and you're gonna free up CeeDee Lamb, and now it's a pick your poison offense.
Yeah,
And CeeDee Lamb is probably sitting there going, thanking everybody. Because if they double George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb is going to be open. If they double CeeDee
yeah,
Lamb, George Pickens is going to be open, and CeeDee Lamb just wants to win.
yeah,
So when you look at that, and you look at the moves they've made in free agency, like beefing up their offensive line, now they have to really start focusing on getting a contract done for Micah Parsons and keeping Micah in the star helmet. You know,
yes,
and they have one of the they've had one of the top defenses in the league in the past 5 years. Since Michael Parsons has been in the league, when he's playing, they're top. They're one of the top defenses in the league.
yeah.
If we're just going by this offseason and what we've seen so far, I think Dallas is going to be a threat to the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders, and the NFC East is going to be fun to watch again. Because for a while it was Philly's division to take or to lose.
Well, it was like an alternate between nobody has repeated as a division champ, and I don't know how long. So, yeah, and then you say Philly, Washington, but it really was kind of like before the Jay Daniels move happened in Washington. It really was like, okay, is Dallas going to win it this year? Philly, because Dallas went 12-5, 3 straight years. The Eagles Super Bowl year, playoff teams, so stuff like that. But I think yeah, the passing game is going to be there. Dak is going to put up numbers in the passing game, but I want to see what the running game, because that's what is going to win you games in the playoffs. Yeah, you can still have good defense, but if you don't have a running game, you can't keep the other team off the field. So I want to see how this run game look along with a defense in the postseason, because it's been a while since I've seen the Cowboys put both products on the field at the same time, and they both turned out great as far as winning playoff games. So because we see what
And
Philly just did.
I was going to say, I think we saw with Philly how important the run game is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they highlighted the run game, and they weighed on the run game heavily to get them into the playoffs and to win the Super Bowl. And I
Yes.
think Dallas has sat there and they're doing the right things for it. But now, when you have they're mimicking what Philly has: AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and a really good running back. Now, I think the Cowboys have a pretty good running back, a really good offensive line, and a mediocre right now quarterback until he can prove otherwise. And I say
Yeah.
mediocre simply because he's not productive enough because
In the
he's not
postseason.
healthy enough. Well, and he's
Yeah.
not healthy enough. He's been injured so often. So
Yeah.
a healthy Dak with a good running game, and you look at the Cowboys with the moves they've made, they're a threat. They could be a threat in the NFC East. And it's just like the Giants. I see what the moves the Giants are making in the draft. And I'm very impressed. I think the Giants in the next 3 years are going to be one of those that could also be a threat for the East and the NFC. And
I
I
won't
think
be
NFC
surprised
East
if the
football is back.
Giants. Yeah, I wouldn't be honestly wouldn't be surprised if the Giants did this season what Washington did last season, but or we might get a situation to where we could see because I'm at one point it almost happened that all four teams in the division could have been in the playoffs, but I think Washington slipped up towards the end because what as we know there's 7 spots now. You got your division winners and then 3 wild cards, so we could possibly see a situation where the division winner, of course, and then the 3 wild cards belong to basically all 4 playoff spots belong to one team in each. East team of the division. I couldn't get it out. So we could potentially be saying stuff like that. But I kind of, and apparently, they say the Cowboys are not done. So maybe because I think the Cowboys still need some pieces at cornerback. So maybe perhaps a Jalen Ramsey or a Jair Alexander, because Green Bay has been looking to move away, move off from Jair Alexander. So maybe we could potentially see that. But yeah, this offense, and then we brought in a Miles Sanders or Javonte Williams, and then also drafted Jaden Blue out of Texas, another an elusive runner, and then bring in a power runner and Phil Mafra in the seventh round from Clemson. Hopefully, those two guys can make the team. And they just cut one running back that was on the roster, so it's going to be a lot of guys also. And that was in that crowd. That's in the now crowded running back room. It's probably not going to be on the team. Like a Deuce Vaughn is probably going to get let go, and maybe one of the guys brought in the free agent during the free agency period might be let go. So there's going to be some guys trying to buy for one of those roster spots at running back. But as far as receiver, okay, we got the receiver one, receiver two. Who's going to be the receiver three? I know Jalen Tolbert, he's productive, but can he
Well,
step
I
up, be
mean,
that guy, and that's in the situation to be the wide receiver three
and
in
I
this
and I think
offense?
I think you. I mean, you got to wait and see what Jerry Jones is going to do, because that was shocking that came across today with George Pickens
Yeah,
going to the Cowboys.
because
It
it kind of like
surprised
losing
me.
out on Tet. Yeah, kind of losing out on Tet. It kind of okay. We got somebody. This is a little bit of a head case, but we'll kind of see. Maybe some people just need to change the scenery. So maybe this is one of those things. And also, we got to pay attention to he's still on his rookie contract. He's in his fourth year now. So do they pick up the
Mhm.
fifth year option, or does he get extended? Like, and we know how Jerry Jones is when it comes to extending players. So and then it's plus he's not a Cowboy. We know Jerry is going to take care of the Cowboys before he takes care of any other guy. Like, only reason why he paid Amari Cooper what he paid Amari Cooper is because he almost went to Washington and he didn't want that to happen. So he threw Amari Cooper a boatload of money. So let's see let's see how this season goes. This is one of those, okay, if it works, it works. We'll bring you back. But if it doesn't work, which more than likely, you could probably have 2,000-yard receivers on the roster easy. With Jake Ferguson at tight end, can probably have at least 500 to 600, 700 receiving yards, and then the running backs doing what they doing. So and then Shoddy, Brian Schottenheimer was with the Jets when Rex Ryan was the head coach, and Rex Ryan was pretty much running the defense. And Brian Schottenheimer had Mark Sanchez as a young quarterback, but they leaned heavily on the run. Seattle, Legion of Boom days, he was up
Yep.
there. They leaned heavily on the run, and stuff like
Sean
that. So it's just like,
Alexander, he was there with Sean Alexander. He was there with Marshawn
yeah. So
Lynch.
So yeah, so it's I think he's trying to create a new identity, even with small things like moving Dak and Michael Parsons' locker together and stuff like that. It's just like he said, there's a method to his madness. He's trying to create a new culture, but even a lot of people are skeptical because they're like, we all know who the guy that kind of been in the
Owner
way the
coach.
last 30 years. Yeah, the been in the
The
way the
owner,
last 30 years.
coach.
Yeah, so yeah, that's all
And
I
so,
got. And
but here's the thing, man. We talked about the NFC East a little bit, and the team that was overlooked up until last year is Washington. Like, do you think Washington can repeat as another threat this year with some of the roster moves they made in the free agency?
as long as a sophomore slump doesn't happen, because it tends to happen. They
Yes.
pop out. Because even Dak had a great rookie year. His sophomore year wasn't the best. Dealing with the Zeke suspension and all that good stuff for those 6 games. He didn't have the
CJ
greatest
Stroud,
second
same
year.
thing. CJ
Yeah,
Stroud,
they
same
didn't. They
thing.
didn't have. They didn't have a good second year. So even Bryce Young got benched. Granted he's with the Panthers, but now they're trying to climb up from the depths of hell and stuff like that. But like
They
history
finished
tells us that,
strong.
like,
The Panthers
yeah,
finished strong, though.
but history tells you that what I'm saying, your sophomore campaign is like, yeah, but I do think, because they also brought in a Debo Samuels. I think they're still going to probably, I would, I would lean heavy into your running. If you see your quarterback struggling a little bit, I would lean heavy into your running game. And they also brought in some offensive linemen, like they traded for Larry Tunsil and stuff like that. So like stuff like that, also pay attention to stuff like that. I don't really think it's going to be much of a drop off, but do they win 12 games again? I would, at the moment, I would probably give them. It's kind of hard. The schedules haven't came out. They'll be out. I want to say next week, and
Next
of
week,
course we're gonna
Monday.
do our thing. Yeah, we're gonna do our thing. We do our thing on that, and look at their schedule first, and then I'll kind of base it off what they can do as far as the win loss total. But
I mean,
it's kind of hard to.
I think Washington bringing in Laramie Tunzel, bringing in a Debo Samuel, who is a flex player because he can also run the ball, right?
Yeah.
And giving Brian Robinson Jr. a chance to kind of rest a little bit, and then you have your Jaden Daniels, of course, if he's in that sophomore slump, you can hand the ball off to either Brian Robinson or you can hand it off to Debo Samuel. And then they pick up Laramie Tunzel, and they have also they picked up that the other tackle in the draft.
Yes.
And you're looking at, well, I mean, I think the roster moves you're making, it's pretty good.
I'm about saying Dan Quinn was another guy that was, and then he brought his guy back and Bobby Wagner, a guy whom was needed when he was DC in Dallas, who he tried to fight to get because that helps in stopping the run. And, we all know Bobby Wagner is a surefire lock for the Hall of Fame. And then having Marshawn Lattimore out there and all that good stuff. So, I think there's not going to be too much of a drop off. They may go from 12 wins to maybe only 10 or 11, or they might just run it back and win 12 games. But yeah, it's going to be kind of interesting in the NFC East.
And a Cliff Kingsbury offense.
Yeah, I want to say as far as I'll make a comparison for him. Like as far as like personality wise, he's not Josh McDaniels, but as far as like play calling, I will say him and Josh McDaniels are some of the better OCs. I don't think they make good head coaches, but as far as like play callers, signal callers, I think they're some of the best offensive coordinators in the NFL. So yes, and I think Cliff Kingsbury kind of had to break away because he had Kyler Murray. He was trying to be basically bring that air raid to the NFL, and that kind of turned on his head. But now it's just like when Washington, you got a quarterback that is mobile like Kyler. He's not doesn't have the arm like Kyler, but he's mobile. He can throw, and then you got physical running backs. So as we saw, so you gotta be more. You gotta. I guess he's learned to be a little bit more well balanced in his approach to his play calling versus just trying to be pass happy because as we see how the league is going, the value of the running back is increased because now we see Ashton Genty, he gets taken first, the first running back taken off the board. You know what I'm saying? We got like 2 running backs taken in the first round in totality this past draft. So yeah, the evolution of I ain't gonna say the evolution, the re-evolution, I guess you could say, of the running game is
I agree.
Coming back to the NFL. And I think that's pretty much it. Is come back again and react to the rest of these NBA playoff series. And thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of Let Me Say This. Next time we run, we will be, we will have all
back
three
to our
guys
trio.
here,
Back to our trio.
Yeah, but we kind of 2 mad today. We just to see how things were. Still went great, but just let us know how let us know how you feel about the NBA playoffs and how you feel about a Tyrese Halliburton. Is he a future face of the league? Is he the next point guard? Because I don't think we had that in a while. Because Chris Paul is, he's on his twilight years, and just let us know your thoughts and opinions, and feel free to like, share, subscribe, and thank you guys for tuning in.
I will say one more thing real quick before we sign off. And you might have to sign off one more time, Anthony. But
yeah,
Anthony Brad posed us a question earlier in the week, yesterday, and I want to hear what our subscribers think on what the most important position in sports is. And I think we should have our answer once we get Dre back on the line.
Yeah,
Give us a little time
like
to think
that.
of it. But I want to know what our
I've
subscribers think. What our subscribers feel the most important position in any sport.
Whether you think it's the point guard in basketball, a goalie in soccer, or a pitcher in baseball, or a catcher, feel free to chime in on that, and then we'll come back with what we think. And we can really make a case for each of those positions I just named in those sports, but we'll come back with what we think is the most important position in all the sports. But we also like to thank you for checking out this episode of Let Me Say This, and we're out.